This is the Layover podcast, where your hosts Tracy Davis and Patrick Trevino share the unfiltered, behind-the-scenes stories of entrepreneurship. So sit back, grab a drink, and enjoy your flight. This is the Layover podcast.
I can't accept the loss, I'm hard-headed. There's a little bit of madness to my method. Many falling off that fine line that I'm treading. I risk anything to be great, and I'm not letting nobody.
We are back kicking off season 2 of The Layover by interviewing Mr. Ben Story, who is the CEO and co-founder of Avius. And not only that, he is one of our good friends and business partners really since the beginning of our own business. Now, Avius was founded in 2006 with a vision of giving a voice back to the customer. Now their guest feedback solutions are in some of the world's busiest facilities, the world's largest theme parks, and they continue to take over the globe. Now, Ben is one of the most down-to-earth, funniest dudes that you're ever going to come across. Not only that, but he's always rocking just the freaking funniest suits that you will ever see, always on brand, always about guest feedback. You guys are going to really love this episode. We truly enjoyed hearing Ben's story of how Avius was started right out of university with a few of his friends, and they continue to work together, hand in hand, side by side, really taking over the guest feedback solution world. So guys, I hope you enjoy this first episode of season 2. We had such a blast recording it. And before we jump into this episode, I wanted to let you guys know that Mind and Social is co-hosting an event with Upwards, which is a women's executive group all across the nation. But here, the Atlanta chapter is throwing an event January 30th for women going through a professional transition, finding that next career. So guys, check it out in the show notes and make sure you RSVP. Now let's jump into the show. So welcome to the Layover podcast. We are so thankful that you finally blessed us with your presence, Ben.
Well, to be fair, it's not me, it's you. You guys aren't ever around.
Dude, you're really busy. You were traveling from the UK to Atlanta to all over the place.
In all fairness, though, Ben is in Atlanta more than we're in Atlanta.
It's facts.
That's true, yeah.
I sent him a note one day, and I was like, "Hey, man, I'm now in Atlanta. Like, we should meet up." He's like, "I'm in Atlanta," and I was like, "Oh, I'm actually not in Atlanta." While sending this message.
Well, I just like that we have to go to the UK to actually meet Ben when he lives here, but we fly to the UK.
Yeah.
5-hour time hop, that's fine.
Yeah. Well, he just shared his Frontier story, so I mean, he could get here for $20, and that's with taxes.
I actually don't think I would want to be in an airline for $20.
It's phenomenal.
How are they running the airline?
Well, everyone has to pitch in. You have to help fuel the plane.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
Ben's like, hold my seat. They need my help backing out of this thing. Right?
Well, thank you so much for finally joining us. We are so excited to hear your story. We have been partners for over 5 years now, I think, since the beginning of Tracks, and you were...
Well, I've been in America for 9 years, and I think I met you within the first couple of months for Atlanta.
Oh, has it really been that long? Oh, wow. Time is really flying by.
Time flies when you're having fun.
That's horrifying. Okay. Well, thank you. And it's so exciting because I wanted you to tell your story, how you began Avius, and how you, like, the thought of starting it, how you began the jumping into being an entrepreneur. We want to hear it all because you've had a wild journey to get to where you are.
It's been fun. It really has been fun. So rewinding, it started out when I was 7. So that was my first business.
7?
Nothing to do with Avius, but my first business I ever ran was a car washing company.
Wow.
And I realised I could go around and I could wash cars for £5. And as a kid, you can't spend like £20 a week. So if I'm washing 4 cars, then I'm getting more money than I can possibly spend. I then employed, quote unquote, my 2 friends. So I would then pay them £1 each.
At 7?
And I would make like £3 out of washing every car. And like, this is when I was at 7.
How did you even know how to do this?
It was weirdly just kind of in my bones. I guess I put it back to mum and dad, primarily mum, that she's always been a wheeler dealer.
Yeah, okay.
So if you go into a shop to buy a new family TV,
she was,
it was always like, well, let's get a better deal. Let's get the model from the show floor and let's get the best deal we can get. And I guess it's been in your blood. Like.
Yeah, when it's in your blood, you can't shake it.
So that evolved through school, where I had some businesses running there and bits and pieces. I was in the Young Enterprise Scheme, which was, again, it taught me a bit more formal business processes. But then the Avius journey actually started stateside. So obviously, as you can tell from the accent, originally from the UK.
We love that accent.
I try to do it. It's horrible. Literally, and I'm not even going to try to do it. She literally said to me, "You sound horrible." Like she goes, it's not,
Wow.
She literally said, you actually sound like you're speaking a language that doesn't exist in this
I mean,
world.
it's not even
in
an
the
accent.
world. She didn't even say England. She said the world.
It's
Wow.
it's bad.
It's bad.
But
I'll show
for-
it to you later.
Patopia.
Yeah, for all the
I'll show it to you
ladies,
later.
for all the ladies listening, they love the accent. So
They do.
go ahead.
That's why we're
I've-
trying to do it.
I've been practicing for 41 years.
Okay. See, I've not been practicing.
I have promised to myself if I ever start saying y'all, so now living in Orlando,
Yes,
if I start
y'all.
saying y'all, then I'm leaving. As long as I stay strong and not say that, then I'll be good. So yeah, it was our first ever family trip to Disney. And being from the UK, coming to Florida is the number one destination of you want to do your big family holiday. And
Right.
we could never afford to do it as a family. So it was myself, my brother, sister, obviously mum and dad. And it was when mum got some inheritance that we could afford to do it. And that was back in 2003, I think it was. And we came out and it was literally Magic Kingdom and I had my eureka moment. So first time in Disney, absolute chaos, didn't know what we were doing, hadn't done any research. Obviously, YouTube didn't exist to really give us much support.
Sure.
And I can literally pinpoint the exact spot. So you walk down Main Street, going towards Tomorrowland on the right-hand side, and there was a mum there that had obviously just paid a lot of money to get in. She had a stroller, she had a kid on her back in like some backpack. She was trying to read a map. The kid was screaming. It was windy. And the moment was, wow, why have we not built like a GPS device for a theme park?
Wow.
Like it would make so much sense.
How
And
old were you at this point?
so that was when I was at university. So I
Okay.
was probably 20,
Okay.
I guess. Yeah,
Gotcha.
19, 20. I was like, that's a cool idea, and sort of thought about it a bit more. Took it back to university and did my final year project for software engineering around a feasibility study on it. So that's where it all started. And we ended up building a proof of concept. Took it to the biggest theme park in the UK, Alton Towers.
Alton Towers?
Alton Towers.
Okay.
It's really cool.
Okay.
It's an
Haven't
awesome
heard that
theme
one
park.
before.
They get about 4
It
million.
just sounds like a
Alton
football club.
Towers. Yeah.
It's an old historic building, and then they've just built a theme park around it. It's,
Well, in all fairness, is anything in England not old?
that's fair. That is fair. I'll give you that.
Because every time I hear someone from England say, it's like, Pat, you gotta understand, it's a very old trolley system. And I was like, but is everything in England's old?
Well, the beautiful thing about the park, and if you ever get a chance to visit, it's in Stoke-on-Trent. It's built in a valley.
Oh,
So
okay.
That's cool.
Like
That is
part
neat.
of it is the gardens they've got, and you walk through the gardens,
Oh,
and they've
that's
sort of had to
beautiful.
squeeze rides in
So we
rather
have-
than purpose-built theme
That's
parks.
We
Wow.
have another mutual UK friend, and he was here recently, and we were having a conversation, and I was like, I would cracked a joke or something, and I talked about paying with dollars, and he goes, well, no, that's a little reward for you guys for being naughty.
Naughty, yeah.
And I was like, oh, that makes perfect sense when you say that. Because we were talking about, like, because originally, I grew up in Boston, the Boston area, and
Yeah.
everything in Boston is old. And so even here in the United States, when
Relative old.
relatively
Yes.
old, right? And so here, when I'm in Georgia, like, oh, this is such an old town. It was established in 1720. I was like, oh, ours was established in 1620. And you're like, we're at zero.
Yeah.
Like,
So you were. I can't.
well, we have been.
Yeah.
No, it's so we ended up. I finished my project at university. I ended up winning an innovations award,
Oh, that's
Yeah.
awesome.
which was the first time a software guy has ever won it.
No
'Cause it's-
way.
At Bournemouth University, it's all part of the design engineering software team, and it's always been the design team that have physically made a gadget or a
Yeah.
electrified ice cream scoop. The first ever pop-up tent came from Bournemouth University.
Wow.
Wait, so you went to Bournemouth University?
Yeah.
You know, Bournemouth just beat Arsenal.
Yes, I saw that 2-0. That was
Yeah,
that was
that's
unexpected.
horrible. Anyways, keep going. Sorry.
So we ended up. I won this award, which no one's ever won before, and I was like, okay, this is an opportunity. Let's see if there's something in this. And ended up taking it to, say, Alton Towers. Showed them this proof of concept. We'd recorded this 10-minute guerrilla video that we'd recorded in their park, edited, cut it all down to show the benefits of our system.
And they didn't know this was happening?
No, they didn't have a clue. So
And
this,
let me ask you, because we share a little bit behind the scenes, as we talk with a lot of entrepreneurs, like people think that it's all this professional editing and all these things, and it's, what was it, just a simple phone?
literally,
recording?
the phones couldn't even do cameras.
Right.
So it was an old school Sony on a tripod. One of my idols that I look up to is definitely Sir Richard Branson. And one of his taglines is "Screw it, let's do it."
Yeah.
And I just love that.
Yeah.
And I'm very, I've known you
That's
guys for
your
years.
life motto.
It really is. Like, beg for forgiveness, never permission.
Right,
Just
right,
get on
right.
and get it done. So we did exactly that. We went around the park, we did all the filming, showed them this video, and they were sat there first like, why did this happen? We didn't know about it.
Wow.
And obviously it had different modules.
Yeah.
So we'd partnered up with Dell because there was no hardware to run this on. So it was a real state-of-the-art Dell PDA that was in a waterproof box with a GPS module with an extra battery, and it was clunky and it was horrible. And it could do everything from navigation.
Yeah.
So that was my initial point. It could also do lost child announcements. It could do virtual wallet. It could do ride media.
Oh, wow.
It could do all these different modules of it
That's
as part
insane.
of it. And one of the modules was virtual queuing. But we showed everything to them, and they were like, and it wasn't anything to do with guest feedback. That could have been one of the
Yeah.
add-ons. And they were blown away. They were like, we want this next season. That's
Yeah.
amazing. I was like, cool. It's going to be about £2 or £3 million. So at the time, 4 to 5 million US. And they kind of laughed. They're like, we could buy a ride for that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But obviously for me, I'm like, well, you need to put a fiber network in. You
Yeah,
need to get all this
absolutely.
hardware, and we can do it. And it will generate you revenue. So as you're walking down the main strip, rather than being a row of trees, it could be a Coca-Cola billboard.
Right. Yeah.
So they loved it, but also laughed at us.
Of course.
So in that meeting, which it was funny because I've loved that theme park, and going in the visitor entrance for the first time was a real like moment in my life, and I'm sure you can recognise sort of flags of achievement.
Yeah.
And so signing in as a visitor, I was like, oh, this is cool. And I had a second eureka moment being sat in that meeting around the virtual queuing, because the way they were doing their system, similar to other major parks, was you would go to a ride, you would get a ticket, it would come back at that time
Right.
and go on the ride. Very difficult to monetize, but almost impossible to keep it real time. So if a ride went tech or something happened, they suddenly had a bigger queue of people with a virtual queue
Wow.
than the actual queue. So I was like, oh, I wonder if we can do that. And 20 years ago, everyone still had a cell phone.
Right.
So we ended up, from that meeting, we evolved a product called Text Queue, which did all the virtual queuing pieces, but on your phone. So you could walk into Alton Towers and you could text log flume space 4, and it would use the algorithm that we built on the back end to book you into a slot and then text you and say, yep, you're booked for an hour's time. So you'd still wait the same amount of time.
Yeah.
You would pay a premium for that service, but it then suddenly means we know that Pat's about to turn up in 45 minutes. So in 30 minutes, we're going to message you and say, well, if you go there early, there's a coffee shop. We'll give you a free donut if you buy a coffee. So we tied in marketing to it.
And you were doing this. I mean, this is early stages of this tech. I mean, this
it
is.
was the device and this Dell clunky thing that we
Yeah.
were talking about. I explained to them, I was like, eventually technology will come out that this will be on everyone's phone.
Absolutely.
And they laughed at me. And literally a year later, Steve Jobs announced the iPhone.
Shut
And
up.
I'm like, that's kind of cool.
That is amazing.
And going back to that proof of concept, I
Yeah.
did base it around Magic Kingdom.
Yeah.
The actual demo that we had. And it's really funny now, looking back, the current Disney application they have for My Disney Experience looks almost identical to my dissertation I did 20 something years ago. Which
All
is
comes
like,
full circle, man.
it really does. So that's how we started. We had this text queue product.
Yeah. So you always were coming up with a solution to a problem, it sounds like.
Pretty much,
Yep.
yeah. And again, I've always been brought up with the harder you work, the you get rewarded for it. So and I want to help people.
Yeah.
You mentioned on previous podcasts why you've got into business, why you do
Yeah,
what
what's
you do.
your why?
And it's not to make money, it's to make a difference, and it really does.
So then how did the passenger or guest feedback piece come into it?
So the linking piece was this text queue product we evolved and we built.
Okay.
One of the sister parks of Alton Towers at the time was the London Dungeon. And they have a 4-hour line typically to get into the attraction. So
Jeez.
tourists will literally turn up and stand on the street for 4 hours to then go and spend an hour and a half going around this phenomenal attraction. But there was no queuing solution as
Right.
such. So we ended up deploying to that. And again, being the entrepreneur, we went to a trade show. Never been to a trade show before. And we were coming out to Atlanta, ironically, for our first big show. So we decided that we'll spend the money and do a one-day show in London. Because then if we've forgotten anything or something doesn't work,
Right.
we can get it wrong in England and fix it for the
Yeah.
next month. And I coined a phrase, story luck. So my last name being Story. We absolutely lucked out at this show. It was an absolute blowout. It was useless. We got nothing from it. It was our first show. We were nervous. We didn't know what we were doing.
I hate that feeling.
And we got somehow distracted on pack down. It was only a one-dayer, but we ended up packing down like 20 minutes late, which at the end of a show, everyone's gone at that
Everyone's
point.
Yeah,
done.
yeah.
Yeah.
And this was only a tabletop exhibition in London. And because we were late, this guy just came up to us really casually, just dressed casual. He's like, so you do queuing stuff? I was like, yeah, like, who are you? Like, I don't really have time for this sort of thing. He's like, well, I'm the general manager of the London Dungeon. I was like,
Shut up.
okay. But obviously in my head, I'm like, I've built this for theme parks. So I'm like, yeah, you're a London attraction, single gate. It's not for me. And obviously being from the UK, I'd never been.
Yeah.
It's all for tourists. And he's like, yeah, we have a 4-hour line. I was like, oh, okay.
Your brain's going off.
I was like, oh, that could work. And within 3 weeks of meeting him, we were doing a proof of concept.
No
wow.
way.
Through Christmas with him.
That fast?
And he punted for it. And we had to, the system was pretty much there, technology wise. But we had to have validation systems. So you could, the way you got your text ticket as such, it allocates you. So if it's still a 4-hour line, you still waited 4 hours, but you could go shopping. or you can go to another attraction, or you can go do something,
absolutely.
and then come back. And the niche that we had, the way we made revenue out of it, is we charge a premium. So we charge an additional £3 per guest, but we got 50% of that.
Wow.
But more importantly, for the dungeon, they are so limited on capacity, they didn't allow anyone to use coupons and discount vouchers. So suddenly they had a higher yield per guest that was coming in, and they took the £1.50.
Sure.
But for us, we were working in the dungeons.
That's
so I
so
worked 6 weeks straight. We had
crazy.
these validation devices. So when you're coming in through the fast track entrance, you were typing in our 6-digit code. It did a live lookup. It validated the ticket, and it was That's
that
how.
was where you got your start. Man, that's amazing.
So that's how it started. We then, long story short, and it's the conversation for over a bigger beer. We got approached by another company that did queuing solutions, and they were like, "How have these 3 students from Bournemouth University got in with, at the time, the second biggest attraction operator behind Disney?" So Merlin Entertainments, that own the dungeons, own Alton Towers, now operate 140 attractions. They're still number 2 to Disney. They're like, how have these students got in? And it was by that show that we got completely lucky to meet Colin.
Right.
And that's how it started. So we got approached by them. We ended up doing a deal where basically they were like, we want your client portfolio. We're like, we don't have a portfolio. We have a client. Like,
Yeah. You are the client.
But they wanted our tech. They had a queuing
Right.
solution that
Right.
used a proprietary bit of hardware.
Yeah.
That ironically people had to stand in line to go and get. And I was like, you've got a
That
queuing
doesn't make
solution you have to
sense, yeah.
queue for? But okay. So yeah, we ended up basically selling that whole solution to them.
No
But the
way.
relationship we had built with the dungeons already, they were doing pen and paper surveys. And this is where it all started with what we
Yeah.
now know as the Avius. And they were struggling to get people to complete them. If a staff member got handed a paper survey and it rated it badly, they just filed it in the trash can. So the scores were awful. They were struggling to get... They used to try and get 50 surveys a week was their target to get a quota, which statistically isn't even valid.
Yeah.
Right.
And we basically were like, we can make that electronic. And again, another fun story. We built something in Adobe Flash, Acrobat Flash back in the day, I think it was.
Yes.
And we still got it. The front end was amazing. And it was dungeons, so it's a scare attraction.
Having PTSD of Flash.
Yeah. But it basically took their existing paper survey. It was electronic. We bought an old point of sale touchscreen from eBay for like literally 100 quid. We hid an old PC in like a cupboard and ran some cables. It was proper like jaunty put together. I think it might last 2 weeks before it got trashed. It lasted 6 months and did 15,000 surveys.
Shut up.
So suddenly they were like, well, this is incredible.
Yeah, you're onto something. Yeah.
So they were like, yeah, we want to roll this out. We're like, okay. But behind the scenes, and again, you can appreciate this. If a client tells you we've got an opportunity for revenue, we want it, you're going to be like, yeah, of
Yeah,
course.
you shake your head.
Yeah, no
Absolutely,
problem.
yes.
They didn't realise that actually the way it worked behind the scenes was it was this one-off front end of Flash that was writing files locally to the machine. Once a week on a Saturday night when they closed at about 8 o'clock at night, I had to log in over Log Me In, copy all the files, input them to Excel, and
Stop.
spend like 4 hours creating graphs, charts, comparisons. We didn't even have a database.
That is so scrappy. I mean, I'm telling you,
Yep.
I have similar stories to that shit, but that is when you know that you are knee deep in entrepreneurship. When you're literally like, the client thinks it's this like sophisticated
Yep.
thing. And you're like, no, I'm actually in the ceiling hanging it myself or logging in at night.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah, that reminds me of like committing to do like a minor league baseball team. It was like, oh yeah, we have a local team. Don't worry about it. We got this. We got this.
Yep.
And then as soon as they get in the truck, we need a local team.
Yeah, so
Presence to do
that's
this.
that's how it started. And they literally turned around. They're like, this was in the, I think it was the October the year after. So we'd been working with them for about a year, and they turned around and said, yeah, we're going to roll it out across our Madame Tussauds brand, our Dungeons brand, Sea Life brand. So
Wow.
about 30 attractions to start. And literally, I remember sat in this boardroom, and they are going down this list, and they're like, well, we'll put it into Madame Tussauds London. I was like, that's cool. That's like a big flag in the sand. And we'll also put it into Hong Kong. You'll put it into Las Vegas, New York, and they're just listing off all these places. And in my head, I'm like, I dreamed to go to these places. Like I've always been very envious of my uncle. That he was a jeweler, and he used to travel all over the place and pick him up from the airport. I was like, that's so cool. You get to travel on planes. And obviously, we didn't have a solution that scaled. It was a
course.
fixed
Yeah.
Right.
dungeon brand. So I say we, Luke and Will, my co-owners of the company, literally we worked all the way straight through Christmas to get a solution built. And we came up with something, and the client was happy, but we had to find kiosk suppliers, hardware.
That's wild.
Figure out customs, like how do you ship a kiosk to Hong Kong? Like,
I mean, but this is an awesome example because a lot of people who are starting businesses think that they have to have all the answers before they start. And my biggest advice is like just start. Once you take that first step, you're gonna figure it out. But a lot of people think that they have to have A, B, C like mapped out, and you're a prime example of you didn't have the fucking answers. Like you just are gonna figure it out.
I think it's one of our, if we're self-critiquing, one of our biggest weaknesses. We've never really taken big risks.
Yeah.
Because we've always been too scared to take a risk. Whereas actually sometimes you're better to make a decision, even if it's the wrong one.
Absolutely.
And that's quite a big thing that when I now go back and speak to other, like, I go back to university and actually help now lecture and talk back to them and
that's your biggest
help
piece.
like mentor people back the other way because it's the best thing I can do. And give
But
back.
what was that feeling? Because we've shared like your feeling when you're like, holy shit, somebody bought smart restrooms. I gotta get to the the whiteboard again.
Yeah, I gotta figure it out.
Look at this, right? But what was that feeling you felt when they were like, hey, this is awesome, and in their brain this is scalable, and in your head you're like, this is not scalable right now. Like, what goes through your mind when they start naming like Vegas, New York, Hong Kong?
I don't think I've ever taken on a challenge that I've ever felt like. I've run a marathon. I've cycled London to Paris. Like, if I'm stubborn. So if someone, especially if someone, if someone says you can't do something, I'm like, well, we're definitely going to do that.
Yeah. I mean, why do you even challenge me?
I'll speak to my therapist. Like, she's earned thousands from it. But it was exciting. I knew technically we could get something done. But it's even down to practical things, that there's an 8-hour time zone difference between the UK and Hong Kong. So we're out there, so it's myself and my brother, we're out there installing Hong Kong. And we've never been to Asia. So it's practical things of like, how do we get a drill?
Yeah.
Can we ship it? Does it, like, so many silly things you don't even think about. We then dial into the UK guys to get support, but we hadn't even time zone planned.
Wow.
So we're calling, we're like, okay, the machine's now online. Can you log me in and configure it? They're like,
dude, it's 2 a.m.
Literally, they're like, we're in the pub. It was like midday. It was like midnight, and they're like, we're getting drunk, and I'm like, I'm really sorry. Like, I need you. So literally, our first machine in Madame Tussauds Hong Kong at the peak was configured while very much. I wasn't intoxicated.
Can we just say like allegedly, just in case anybody?
We can relate to that because the other day, it was actually like a month ago. She's like, "Hey, like, who are we meeting at this meeting?" And I was like, "Oh crap! I never told you who we were meeting. We're already on the plane." And she goes, and I didn't really see like anyone put a hotel on my calendar. And I was like, oh crap, I forgot to book the hotel too. And then so we're going through this. I don't know. There's a part of, I never want to lose that character of business, right? When it gets too corporate structured and it's just, I kind of just wing it and just kind of go
figure
with
it out.
And it works sometimes. But when you're in San Francisco and you realize that the U.S. Opens there and there's no hotels, and you're like, oh crap.
Bit more challenging.
Yeah, that's a little bit more challenging. But that's, I guess we run into that with like entrepreneurs that we talk to and other business owners where they can't even get past the name of their company or a logo or color or brand. I mean, when we, me and my previous partner, we started that business, I didn't even know what I had no input. I didn't care what the business name was going to be. I was just so driven by how are we going to succeed? Like, how are we going to make this happen? And I remember somebody asked me one day in a meeting, they were like, so what does it mean? What does those 3 acronyms mean? And I was like, fuck, I don't know what the 3 acronyms mean. This is embarrassing.
Yeah.
Well, that's a good point. How did you come up with Avius?
Yeah.
So that all links into what I've talked about. So Avius is actually the Latin derivative for the word lost.
No shit.
So that's where it all started with this GPS device.
Wow.
But originally, the company back in the day was actually called Story Technologies. That's what we literally legally named it.
Yeah.
And Luke and Will, that I say my co-directors that helped set it up, were like, yeah, that's fine, whatever. We're just employees.
Sure.
Right.
Yeah.
Then as it evolved into something, they're a
They're
bit
like,
like,
we want it.
yeah, we kind of let's have a bit more of a generic name,
Yeah,
etc.
right. It's like if Trax was called Tracy.
Yeah.
Like, it'd be
Tracy's
odd.
Smart
I'd
Restrooms.
be like, hey, you guys want to buy a Tracy? Like,
I mean, it kind of should be. Like,
Tell me more, guys.
fan.
I feel like
what do you sell, Tracy's? You know? But from there, so now, because, I mean, again, you've had so much success.
You have.
And
I
we have
appreciate it.
partnered up with you guys so much. You're one of our preferred vendors, if not our preferred vendor, when it comes to this type of stuff. Every person that meets you loves you. And I really mean that. I never forget the first time I ever met you. You guys have known each other a lot longer. The first time I met you, I don't know if you remember this. You probably don't. But
he wrote it down in his diary.
I did. I go, dear diary. Right? And then I talked to my therapist afterwards.
Yeah, as long as we don't have the same one, we'll be fine.
I was like, who is that guy? That guy's insane. Look at that suit. Who would wear that? Da da da. And everyone around me, I'm not gonna name them, but they were all in the Infax tracks time in the booth. We were side by side, and they're all like hearing me talk, but they all knew you. And I was like, oh my gosh, like what is that guy doing? Why does he have an M&M booth and showing this thing? And everyone was like, that's Ben. And I was like, who is Ben?
You don't need a last name. It's just Ben.
And literally, they're like, that's Ben. I was like, well, is anyone going to tell me what Ben does? Or like, what's Ben's last name? They're like, no, you need to know it's Ben. And then later on that evening, we were in Tampa.
Yep.
And we met. And from there, we just kind of took off and we hit it off. We had a lot in common. We drank a lot. So that was
That seems fair.
That does. But that was the first time I ever met
But no, the whole jacket thing, and those for the listeners, like they may have seen me at various shows. I can't even remember the first time I wore a silly jacket. It was completely unplanned. It was just a bit random, and it got attention, and it was an absolute icebreaker.
And you don't remember the first time. It wasn't
Genuinely
like a thought
don't remember.
process of
Tracy,
like, I'm going to get this.
I saw Ben, and I'm blind. I saw Ben 4 or 5 aisles down on a show, like a conference show floor, and we were just at like the aisle, middle aisle, and I could see his booth, and he had just positioned a booth in the middle of the aisle, middle booth facing there. So if you walked on the aisle, you had to see his booth, which was genius from a marketing standpoint. But I was like, that thing is, I think it was yellow. It might have been yellow. I don't remember what it was.
I do have quite a wardrobe.
But
yeah.
I was like, who wears that? And like, I never forget. Everyone kept talking
It sticks
about
in your
But
head.
that's the thing, and it's not related to, yes, I've got a branded one for the company, but
Yeah.
the majority are like Star Wars branded. There's a Christmas one. There's a Mario one. It's a random thing that I did. And again, growing up and growing the company up through a leisure tourism environment, in the theme park world, it's a bit more, not accepted, but a bit more understandable, still unique and still different.
Right.
And I was known as that guy. I remember going to my first ACI show, wearing a funky jacket, and we were exhibiting, and we were fish out of water because it was a new industry for us. And I genuinely got approached by someone that thought I was the paid entertainment.
Shut up.
And they didn't think I was an exhibitor. They're like, oh, so are you here to like juggle and entertain like the opening reception?
What kind of show was this?
This is ACI.
Airport.
It's ACI and
they're
I.
boring. Those aviation shows are boring.
Well, everyone else was business casual, business
I
hire.
thought you were. I honestly thought I was like, that's Curious George's dad. Like, I was like, he's just missing the hat.
But that just shows you like the industries that we work in. You can see a difference of the stereotypes of aviation is a little bit more slow.
You know what
and
I
stuffy.
take away from that though, honestly, it's risk marketing, right? You're exposing yourself to that. But everyone who saw you that remembered the name Avius.
Absolutely.
On that same show, I had a guy on day 2 come up to me. He's like, this is going to sound really weird, but have you been to IAPA, the big theme park show? I was like, yeah. He's like, oh, I thought it was because I've just moved across industries. And I was like, I'm sure I recognize you. And I was like, he didn't know what I did, but it didn't matter. He remembered me.
And that is so important for businesses. People, like, you talk about risk and all these other things that people do. People sometimes avert just the basics. They feel like they need to do all this extravagant stuff. And realistically, it's just taking that first step forward. And I think it's weird. I didn't know about the whole Bournemouth thing. I'm actually kind of turned off by the Bournemouth aspect of it. But that's so cool. And I think you guys both share that when you first started it, I know that you talked about, because you told me your story of how like Trax all started. But did you ever have any point where people kind of, I don't want to say made fun of you, but didn't really understand what you were trying to do with the whole feedback type stuff?
Not overly. It's definitely evolved, and people have now understood more and more that feedback's important.
Right.
We've had some clients that we've approached 10, 15 years ago that have gone, well, no, we don't need to. Or why not? Because, in fact, there's a major airport that I won't name that I know them really well, you know them really well, and I've tried and tried and tried, and their answer is, we don't need a feedback solution because people are always going to come to our airport. They have to. And it's like, what? But surely if you understood them and they have a, and say, take Hartsfield Jackson. You know, they've deployed a lot of our solutions. They've improved the passenger experience. Secondary spend has gone up. So actually there's an affinity between theme parks and airports because people have a choice of which airport and which theme park to go to. And it's treated a bit like an attraction. As you guys know, they have an opportunity to spend extra money on food and beverage, on retail.
Yeah.
So from the airport operator side of things, if they can get people in 5 minutes earlier and spend 5 minutes longer, multiply that by 110 million passengers, and they're all going to spend 10 cents more, suddenly that's mega money.
And it goes back to, whether it be a passenger or a guest, they're going to tell you what their emotions are. And you rather have them put that emotion into something that you can control than Twitter, right?
Yeah.
So for something to go viral, but if you just listen to what your passengers or your guests are saying, they will tell you what is going on in your facilities. Where are you lacking, right? So even like use Atlanta Hartsfield, your system is Atlanta Hartsfield, is by understanding if someone says, my gosh, there's a bad odor in this area, and now 700 people have said the same exact thing in 7 days, you should probably go check if there really is an odor. Maybe you have a ventilation problem. Maybe you have air circulation problem. So there's a lot of correlation to how it impacts other things. It's not just let's collect these services and see how we're doing. It impacts every single touch point within a building or a park.
Yep.
So as you are growing Avius, because you're spot on, like the passenger experience, the guest experience, people will tell you what it is. As you started to like roll this out, did you expect this much data coming in? I mean, did you expect guests to give you this much feedback? Because you get a shit ton of feedback.
Honestly, no.
Okay.
So that piece I mentioned about the dungeons having 15,000 surveys, that's just, it's ridiculous numbers compared to their targets they had.
Did you think you were going to do a pivot table for like 400?
I was genuine. When we went to visit the site, I genuinely was nervous when people are using it. It was like, don't break, don't break, don't break. And like, even now we've got the front end, there's a hidden back door that you can get out of it.
I
so
love it.
Back in the day, it doesn't work now, caveat. But when you got to the keyboard entry, if you typed in the word quit now, it killed the front end and went back to the Windows operating system because it was our easy way of getting into it without a mouse. And just little silly, but you're watching people use your systems.
Yeah.
And people didn't know who we were. And I'm watching it, I'm like, oh, don't break, don't break, don't break, don't break.
But a part of that had to be satisfying. Like,
Oh,
part of that is like, holy crap! Like,
it's
we
such
worked all December to do this.
It's such a pride moment, and so I've got my brother, my sister. My brother was very influential at the beginning of the company to push me into doing this because I was lucky enough, and again, one of my seeing an opportunities. I ended up getting an internship in England. So my degree course was a 4-year course, 2 years in school, 1 year in industry for a minimum 40 weeks, and then you do your final year. I had a kind of throwaway internship that. It did the job, but it was just a drinking job that I'd convinced the university that I was...
It's funny you say that because I was on a 4-year plan, which ended up becoming a 5-year plan, but I think the drinking was not an internship. It just prolonged.
Well, I mean, every student drinks, I get that, but the job I had it was fine. It ticked a box because I was backing up the server, so I could, under my software engineering degree, I was doing techie stuff.
Yeah.
But the following year's internships for Atos KPMG were interviewing, and I was like, I reckon I'd be pretty good for them. So I entered for the internships for the year after and went through their interview process. And within 20 minutes of them sitting down with this room of 50 potential student employees, they're like, wait a minute, we've looked at your university dates, and when we're recruiting, you're going to be back at your final year. I was like, I know, but I'm really good, and I think that there's something I can do for your company.
That confidence.
And literally they were like, and they, from this room of 50, they sidetracked me, kind of like The Apprentice, and they literally sidetracked me separately into a different room, put me through 3 hours of interviews, back to back, made me do like literally live presentations, explaining how I do this. And by the end of the day, they offered me a job. And by the end of the week, they had me literally back reporting and working.
That's incredible.
At the time, I then spoke to my grandparents. I was like, so I'm still living at mum and dad's for my placement year. I was like, I need a vehicle.
Yeah.
And so my grandparents were kind enough. They're like, yeah, we'll get you a car. I was like, cool. So I reported to, in fact, you would appreciate this. I reported to Stockley Park, which is very near Thorpe Park, but it's where they run VAR, the same industrial estate where they do the video assistant referee for the soccer. And I turn up day one, and it's
where they get every Arsenal call wrong.
And this is my like first proper job. And I've had a few other jobs. I've had. In fact, we'll talk about that in a minute. All my fun jobs I've had.
I have to hear about that.
I've had some random ones. And I get they're like, oh yeah, this is that guy. Okay. And literally they're like, well, as of Monday, so this is the Friday. As of Monday, you're now going to be working in Canary Wharf, and you're going to be working under, I think it was Vodafone, so one of the massive telcos.
Yeah.
Doing techie stuff and trying to find isolated lines. But suddenly I didn't need a car because I was getting the train every day. So I was like, thanks, Grand and Grandfather. I appreciate the car. But I worked 6 months in Canary Wharf, and it was the most awesome experience.
That's amazing.
But the way that looped back in was, it got to the end of this, and it wasn't even an internship. It was just a short employment. And I spoke to my line manager's boss that we'd all gone out for beers. He's like, so are we doing like some sort of sponsorship through the final year? Or I was like, we haven't really discussed it, but we probably should. He's like, okay. And literally over a beer, I negotiated £1,500 for my last year as a bursary of just like, have some free money. No commitment to come back, no payment back if I didn't. And they offered me a job to come straight back. So I'm finishing university. I'd won this Innovations Award. I had a golden job sitting there that would be in the city and would progress me through to a 6-figure salary very quickly. And I was like, I don't know what to do. And it was the same as my brother. It was like, look, you got no mortgage, you got no kids, give it a go.
Yeah.
Just try it.
Yeah.
And that's how we got going.
So the entrepreneurship side of it, like that was not something that you had initially like went out thinking you were going to do. That was just kind of your doors opened up, your mind opened up.
No,
to
so
it.
my first job, obviously doing the car washing, but then following that, it was working in the village shop. So I never mind
the
working
car
for someone
washing
else.
sounded more like you were hustling. I mean, I'm pretty sure that
It was when the other two unionized and realized what was going on with the money. They're like, surely we split it £1.66 each.
Paul's like, I don't know if that's fair. But,
but I've got no problem working for others. I've enjoyed that too. I say working in the village shop, and it's England culture. So I'm at this point probably 12, working in the village shop on my own, running a shop that's selling lottery tickets, selling liquor, selling beers, running everything. And it was in England. It was just totally.
All of this to me is coming full circle. 12 years old, lottery tickets, liquor. All of this is coming full circle.
Makes sense.
I haven't
Makes
mentioned
sense.
that to the therapist yet. So yeah, I've gone through. I mentioned earlier about different jobs I've had. Literally, I've been a milkman.
No way.
So that's why you wake up at 4 in the morning.
Shut the F up.
Like proper random. Like, just like it was.
You were
when I was
actually
at
like
school.
milking cows?
No.
Jeez. Well, hey, here's the funny part, right?
you were milking cows.
That right there is the Georgia side of
I
it.
thought you said you were...
No.
Okay,
No,
so
he's a milkman.
A
so
milkman's
he
the
picks
other
up-
end.
delivering.
The end of the
Okay,
process.
I wanted to make
Cart,
sure.
like-
Okay, my mind goes. So my granddaddy delivered milk. He was a milkman too.
Yeah.
But
for
he
some
wasn't
reason,
touching the cows.
but for some
your
reason-
granddaddy actually told me he was not touching
but
cows.
I would for some reason I just imagined Ben just like milking cows in the morning.
I mean, I've never say never.
Well, you said it was an
Apparently
unusual.
Tracy's been in Alpharetta since 1932. Wow. So did you wear the whole white suit?
I didn't, but it was still waking up at 4 o'clock in the morning, doing 2 hours of work.
Oh my gosh.
And it was through my summer holidays when I was at school.
Yeah.
So I do 2 hours of work, go back to bed, and every week I get paid like £25.
Wow.
Isn't
Which,
it wild
again, is
when
just-
times were just so much simpler?
Yeah.
Man?
And I loved it. It was great.
Absolutely.
And actually, again, full circle, the guy, his nickname was Podge. He was the guy that ran the village shop, got me as a milkman. He was the first ever investor in Avius.
No way.
So that's another whole thing we should go into.
That's cool.
In terms of how we set the company up. We looked at it and we had the three of us as students that were like, what are we going to do? And we're like, well, we need a bit of money to get going. What are the opportunities? And we ballparked we'd need about £50,000, which back in the day was about 75,000 US. But obviously that's not chip change that people are lying around. And in England, we have your equivalent of Shark Tank is Dragon's Den.
Yeah, I remember that.
And we have a couple of the entrepreneurs that are on it, like, say minor celebrities, they were doing a shop opening in London. And I was like, okay, this is an opportunity for me to meet them. So I went full suited and booted in a proper suit.
Wow, I haven't seen that
I
before.
would love to see that.
Yeah.
And I literally cold pitched them at this shop opening. They did the shop opening and they went to speak to them. I was like, hey, this is my idea. And they get pitched all the time.
Yeah.
But I was obviously a bit younger than they used to. They were like, this is cool. Yeah, we can speak to my people. And at that shop opening, they virtually pledged the money, but immediately told me, they're like, obviously not legally binding. They're like, we're going to need at least 51% of the company because it's so high risk.
Yeah.
We'll give you the £50,000 tomorrow, but we want 51%. And I was like,
yeah, that's tough.
Maybe. It validated our ideas, but we took it back. We're like, that doesn't make sense.
Yeah.
And
Abort plan.
hence we then went back and we're like, we still need this 50,000, but how are we going to get it? And we're like, well, let's just break it up into small chunks. And when I've gone back to help lecture small business schools, is you don't need to raise the money from one person and lose control.
Right.
So literally, Podge was the first guy that we valued the company at £250,000 on ideas. We had no sales.
Yep.
It was just ideas. And he invested £5,000 for 2% of the company. And for him, it was throwaway money that he could afford to lose.
Right.
But we did a management buyback a few years ago and he made a massive multiple on his money. And it's like, that's kind of cool. So our initial shareholders were my cousins in Hong Kong, obviously mum, dad, my sister, and my brother put money in. The guy that run the village shop, like it's just random.
Yeah, I just think it's so cool, and for some reason I'm envisioning. I don't want to say your story's like a movie, but I'm almost envisioning like you pitching it to the village. I don't want to say the village tavern, but like the village store, and this guy's like, "Sure, man, let me go out back and get an envelope and give you X, Y, and Z."
I remember going to his lounge and him and his wife were discussing it. They're like, yeah, we're going to do it. And I showed them this 10-minute preview video we had made. And I showed them it and they're like, yeah, we believe in it. Yeah, cool. And I remember them getting the checkbook out and writing a check for real money of £5,000,
Wow.
which
See, all right, so I can see this played out. Like you're being played by Ben Affleck, right, or someone like that, right?
play myself. Oh, it'd be similar, but
Yeah,
yeah.
but I could just see the guy wearing like Adidas sweatpants and just like writing it out to you and just giving you a check and just
Yep.
saying. But that's cool. That just shows how
Confident you are, though.
well confidence is one too in what you're doing, but how much of a people person you are. Like this person literally had no problem in cutting you a check and saying, "Hey, I believe in what you're doing, and I believe in you. More importantly, what's going on." That's cool.
And I think that with entrepreneurship, I think that's the biggest part of it, right? People think that you have to have everything like plan,
Yeah.
deliver. Honestly, it's about the charisma, it's about the confidence, about how you connect with someone more. I mean, if you were giving advice to someone who was going to start a business, what would you say those first steps are, and how do you connect with the people you want invest into your company?
I think the biggest thing is connect with people.
Mm-hmm.
Like it doesn't necessarily mean it's the right person, but just build a network and never decline a phone call.
Right.
Always be open. Never judge people.
Right.
Never throw away ideas.
Yep.
I've met people along the way that have literally kind of laughed at the ideas. Like,
Yeah.
oh, what? People literally pay you for the smiley faces. It's like, yeah,
Yeah, they do.
kind of got. They're
Yeah,
like,
yeah.
what?
It's like the guy who invented the fucking toilet paper.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's like, yeah, we clean
It's-
ass.
someone
Like,
needs
it's
it.
that- I mean, who's laughing now, right? You know?
But yeah, don't be afraid to ask for help.
Yeah.
Like, we were three students that didn't know. Yes, I did an A level, so just before university in business, so I knew some basics, but we weren't presenting to the bank.
Right.
We weren't putting together a business plan and here's our cash. We had cash flow forecasts and I love Excel. Shout out to Excel. But that wasn't the core.
Yeah.
It was, just don't be afraid to ask. Like we wanted this 50,000. We ended up raising about 35, 40 before we then
wow.
picked up the first bit of revenue. We're like, oh, maybe we don't need to do that. But we'd done it without giving away much of the company.
That's what I was going to ask.
Yeah.
Is I mean, when you raise money, you typically give away equity to
Yeah.
do that. So you didn't have to give away much.
Well,
to
didn't have to give
go
away
about
too
it.
much.
What I've seen a lot too is I've seen a lot of people know that you're onto something and try to take advantage of that situation, right? They have done this rodeo before.
Yeah.
And so for someone to say, hey, we'll give you what you want, we want 51%, is because they see the upside long
Yep.
term. They've already done this before. And I have a love-hate relationship with VCs. Like I really do. I think that a lot of times it's done because of the flip of the
Yeah.
return, not actually
For the love of the product.
for the love
Yep.
of the product or the love of or the cause
Yeah.
of what you're doing, right? Because in your case, you're solving a lot of things. You go back to the story of the mom with the backpack with the baby in it. Hopefully, the baby was not in the backpack aspect of it. But I think of those things. She knows we go back and forth about these things. Whereas, when you find the right partnership, the right partner, you'll know. Like you can feel it. You'll know. You understand. But I like what you said, where you don't have to give up a majority of what you have to get to the next point. You
Yeah.
may think you need 50, but in your point, you raised 30 or whatever that number was. But then you started creating revenue where you're like, hey, we don't even have to give up anymore. We're now on our 2 feet.
Yeah.
We can start to bootstrap this thing and get even more aggressive on it. I think that's beautiful. I didn't know that about you guys,
Yeah.
honestly.
So did you know, like when you were growing Avius, did you have a vision for I want to raise money and grow it? Did you have a vision for I just want to live day to day? I mean,
It
what
was
was
definitely a lifestyle business.
Okay.
Didn't have an end goal of are we looking to be acquired? Are we looking to go on the stock market and list? We were just like, hey, this is better than working for someone else.
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely.
And it was fun. We were working in theme parks.
Yeah.
Like my meetings were at theme parks.
That's
And I'm a
amazing,
big
yeah.
theme park geek at heart. So it's
Yeah.
have a meeting and just so happens it's the press day as they launch a brand new roller coaster and I happen to be here. Well,
Funny
This
how
is
that
so
works.
weird. Thumbs up to the camera, right? Yeah. Oh, you mean I could get on this ride to be the first?
but no, one of the bits, and I've mentioned their names a couple of times, Luke and Will. So I went to university with them. Meeting them was even a funny story because I was down in Bournemouth so we were all starting university in the October. I went down for the summer because my brother was down there
Now,
already.
Bournemouth, I don't know. We don't know England.
Oh, so Bournemouth's on the
Is
south
south?
coast. Yeah,
South
it's
coast,
about 2
okay.
hours out of London.
Okay.
Just down the road from Southampton.
Okay.
I picked that university, and I'm not lying, because there was a KFC on the beach.
Stop. That was why you picked the college?
I
let
never
me-
went and did an open day.
Can I tell you something? KFC as in Kentucky Fried Chicken?
Yeah.
Can I tell you something really funny? I actually just read an article, and you can fact check this, Tracy. I know a lot of dumb
I feel
stuff.
like we're in like a debate here.
Listen.
Like, let's fact check.
Kentucky Fried Chicken sells more revenue outside the United States than they do inside the United States. They're huge in Asia, England,
Asia is
India. huge.
I didn't know that.
Huge.
Side conversation we won't go into, but KFC over here sucks in my opinion.
What, compared
KFC
to,
in England
yes.
rocks.
That's wild.
But anyway.
Colonel Sanders picked up his shit and went from Tennessee or Kentucky to England.
So
Apparently to Bournemouth.
So there I am. I've picked Bournemouth University. My sister had been there previously, so there was, and it used to be the family vacation.
Yeah.
So it's the seaside resort that we'd always go down to. There's an affinity there.
Yep.
But I applied for Glasgow, I think it was, because they did video game programming. I was like, that's cool. I applied for Oxford Brookes, which is the cheap knockoff Oxford that's not the posh one that they do the boat race.
But you could say Oxford.
And Bournemouth. And I was like, yeah, I'm just going to go Bournemouth because cool, it's fun.
KFC.
So ended up that meeting Luke and Will, we tried to get into halls of residence and we couldn't. There wasn't enough student accommodation. So back in the day, and this is like 25 years ago, they're like, there's a website with a forum and you can post a forum.
Absolutely, yeah.
And that's how you can get to meet other people and try and get share houses. And Luke
It's like the beginning of Facebook.
Yeah,
when it
early
was
stages,
it's
yeah.
like old school. And Luke and Will had put a post up advertising, we're going to set up Cardboard City on the beach as like a joke. And I was like, that's amazing, I'm in. And that's how we started talking.
Oh my god.
We ended up then, as the three of us were like, yeah, let's meet up in Bournemouth and we'll go and look at some houses. Because I'd been working in Bournemouth for the summer in the bars, I turned up wearing my pajama bottoms, stupid t-shirt, obnoxiously loud on my phone, and Luke and Will had come up and they just saw me from afar and they're like, that's definitely him. And they genuinely checked each other like, should we just dump him now? Like, who is
Should
this?
we get up and run?
Literally, like, who is this guy? And they were like, no, we've come all this way. Like, we'll come and meet him. And we went and looked at a couple of houses. And we found the house that we ended up living in for 2 years together. And we walked in and there's 3 bedrooms. And the biggest bedroom, I just walked in and I was like, shotgun. They're like, what's that mean?
Who
I was
the
like,
hell
I was
is
like, well, it's my room. They're like, what do you mean? What do you mean it's your room? I was like, well, I just shotgunned it. Like, you can't. So for 2 years, I had the best room in the house.
I don't know if you remember this story, but we were in Tampa.
Yep.
And it's the hookah story. Can I tell that story?
We're not on PG.
Okay,
We're good.
so we're in Tampa, right? It's like 1:30 in the morning, maybe 2 in the morning, and we're at this hookah bar that we're smoking hookah on a sidewalk in the middle of Tampa.
Yep.
That sounds normal.
And
Sure.
from a distance, again, I can't see far, but the person I was with was like, I think that's Ben. And I just see someone going, do, 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 like, just, like, literally walking with his beer in his hand, like, do, 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 do. And Ben's about to walk right by us, and he looks over and goes, holy shit, what's up, guys? And he just sits down. And we're like, this was, like, the best thing I've ever seen. And he just chilled with us. We're like,
that's Ben.
And I remember I think I told you the story, and the exact reaction was, oh yeah, that's Ben.
Yeah.
And I was like,
You've been consistent. So it sounds like from day one, when you were 12 all the way to now, you've been very consistent.
That's fair. I'll take that.
So I have a question for you. So coming from a family business and then now coming from a business where I work with friends people who've become close friends. What is that experience like for you? Because I know, we don't have to get too real. We can gently touch it, but working with family is tough.
Really
and
tough,
working with friends is also equally as tough. So would you have any experiences you want to share or any pieces of advice for people who are in that same
Yeah, I think if I could go back and talk to, say, Avius is, 19, 20 years old.
Yeah.
If I could go back and talk to my previous self, I think the easy answer is never employ friends or family. That's the very easy shortcut route. If I was to really go back, I would probably not necessarily lead with that. I would say don't be afraid of doing it, but clearly define the terms of engagement to make sure that you don't get personalities and, personal things involved when you've got to make tough decisions.
And it's very hard, right? Because when you're trying to divide,
it's tricky.
It's hard. It's hard to be like, hey, from 9 to 5, like it or not, I'm your boss. From 5 till the rest of the day, I'm your brother.
And that was the part of the problem. As we grew as a small company, when we employed people, like when we had 2 or 3 employees, I've just got off a cruise with a guy that we called Mini Ben. He was our first intern guy.
Wow.
And we ended up becoming such good friends with him that, we paid for him to do a surprise trip to Vegas with us when he was still an intern student.
That's awesome.
It was just complete. And we presented to him in a champagne bottle the day before we flew. And his reaction is, I've got to go and do washing. Because we were literally leaving the next morning. So don't be afraid to do it because they can be the most loyal and hardworking and give you great ideas. So don't be afraid of that. But it can also, when there's times of conflict, it can be the most destroying thing because it goes beyond the sphere of work.
Yeah. And
it can really take things down. We've gone through the journey and it's sucked. It's, pushed us to breaking points on all parts. But equally, you look at that relationship I've got with Luke and Will, and we were friends at university. We played Monopoly and we fell out and didn't talk for 3 days. We were typical students.
In Monopoly.
And Monopoly, yeah. Genuinely over Monopoly because...
Brutal game of Monopoly.
After the podcast, when we go out for dinner, I'll explain to you a story that I stopped talking to a friend over the game Trouble.
Yeah.
For like 3 weeks.
Yeah.
It was like horrible.
Oh, man.
Yeah. But Luke and I, we've not always seen eye to eye, but even when we've disagreed at work, we've been able to keep the friendship completely separate. And they're still my co-directors and still employed by the company. And it's still the three of us 20 years later, which is quite unusual for a company to be in that structure.
How did you guys find your lanes? I mean, as you guys were starting out, did you have like distinct personalities and distinct strengths, or did you have to figure that out?
I was always the people person. So
no shit.
So I was like...
You surprised me.
Shock.
I thought you were the finance guy.
This is a Layover exclusive. Ding, dang, dong. No, it was obviously I was always going to be the people person. They went through the same degree as I did, software engineering, so they've always been coders, programmers. Right. So I was that lovely layer between I understood programming. I couldn't program myself, but I could be that layer to go, hey, customer wants this. I know we can roughly do that. Yeah. And that's never really changed. The roles have obviously evolved, and did they want to have people below them that they're responsible for head of development? No. But it's things you evolve into and you just get on with it.
Right. Did you guys ever find yourselves like, I don't want to say battling, but crossing paths or crossing lanes?
Yeah. We definitely have.
18, 20 years.
Yeah.
I mean,
we have, of course. And it's been actually, we're so lucky that we will put things to a vote.
Yeah.
And having 3 is a beautiful number.
Yeah.
Because we never get to deadlock. And we're also, with all 3 of us, if any of us are voted out on something, we fully support the other
That's
side.
Nice.
Because you kind of have
That's actually beautiful.
Yeah.
You can't be stubborn about it. It's like, okay, cool. Like, and there's been things that I wanted to do that if we'd done it, it would have been a huge failure.
Sure.
There's been other things that I think we should have gone quicker on something else, and better than ever but you can't hold grudges. It's just get on with it.
That's actually really powerful, because a lot of people hold that internal, like, they didn't choose me or they didn't accept like, and they
and be spiteful.
Absolutely. And you can't run a business that way. I mean, Ben, you've had so much success. So you've started off, 12 years old, really hustling. Like, every day I'm hustling. You literally have started.
I feel like after this podcast, I'm like, hey, Ben, I'm sitting on some money. You want to open a car wash?
Yeah, right. But you've grown so fast and so much. I mean, what is next? Like, what are your goals for Avius? What are your goals personally?
Let's start with Avius. Because your personal ones, I have some fireback questions I want to ask him.
That's why they're liquoring me up.
That's why I got another one if you need it.
So the company thing, I say we're still growing. Obviously, like everyone that was involved with COVID, it was a tough time. Our biggest revenue was from a tourist operator that shut their doors.
Yeah, it's
tough. They were on
tough.
a contract, but obviously we couldn't charge them, and we made sure we navigated. And that was a lovely experience. Probably the wrong choice.
Quotes around lovely.
It was an
mean.
experience to go through to be able to nurture my team and make sure that I knew my team were okay and they could still provide to their families and everything else. So in terms of what the future is for Avius, we genuinely don't know. We're not too prescriptive. We've got a couple of ideas, being 20 years old.
Yeah.
We mentioned it earlier when we were having a couple of sharpeners in terms of we've been around for 20 years. Is that success or not? Well, kind of, yes. But I'm not being driven here by my chauffeur. Actually, technically I was.
You were. We have the video to prove it.
Patrick did pick you up.
Yeah. The car said, thank God, when we got out of it.
So again, I genuinely don't know.
Yeah.
Like, I'm enjoying it at the moment. There's still a challenge. We've got innovation going on. We've got new products coming out. So it's still a challenge. Recently, this week, we were in a really exciting business meeting, which we can't declare who it was. But to be in that position, that was just a cool meeting for the 3 of us to be on.
When we were in that meeting, I will say, like, when I got off, and I don't get excited, this is my smiling face.
Yeah.
I was like, oh my gosh, like, we really just had that meeting.
Yeah.
And I don't want to say it's just a shock of realism.
Yeah.
Where you're like, wow, this journey has gone a long way. I can imagine yours, 18, 20 years, and yours when you started this. I mean, I've been with Trax for, I don't know, 5-6 years. It's still a debate in HR on it. But from when you started your journey, when you started Trax and when you started Avius with your buddies on the beach wearing pajamas, when all that occurred, like, to be like, now you're sitting at that table, right?
Yeah.
And I don't want to make it sound like as in it's like no big deal, because it is a big deal. It is a huge opportunity, right? But just to be able to say you sat at that table, to be able to have that opportunity is a blessing. Yeah. It really is a blessing.
I said this to my co-director. I was like, if it evolves into nothing, I've had the opportunity to own it. It was
Absolutely.
there, and it was brilliant. It was experience.
Absolutely.
It's like a flag in the sand.
Well, one thing I have to say and kind of commend you on, because not a lot of people would admit that, right? Of, hey, you know what? I don't know. And I think that's powerful to say, I don't know. I think a lot of people are scared to admit they don't know, especially as a CEO or a founder. People always are like, what's the answer? And you feel like you have to come up with the answer. And the fact that you're like, you know what? I don't know what the future holds, and I'm okay with that. And we're going to be great no matter what. And we could go left or right or forward or back, and it's going to be okay. That's incredible. I mean, have you always been that way, or did you have to grow into that confidence?
Being very flexible and open to admit defeat when things are not going right. And, you know, there's things that I've been through in my life where you have to hold your hands and be like, hey, I got it wrong.
Yeah.
Cool. Like, no sweat. Yeah. But it's having that. I guess we're lucky enough that we are private.
Yeah.
So if we were controlled by a board, and we looked, one of our options a few years ago was, do we go on the stock exchange and have a board? And actually we were advised against it because of all the red tape and all the politics and if you want to go and suddenly do,
Tracy told me I would last 2 days.
Yeah, you would not last.
Yeah,
you would cuss someone out.
We are lucky enough that we don't have a board. The board is us.
Yeah.
If we decide that, hey, we want to go and do this, we can do it. We can be pretty agile and quick on that.
I think that we've had maybe, I would say, 8 to 9 founders or CEOs sit in that exact chair. You're the first person ever to answer it that way.
I'll take that.
You're the first person ever to
No,
answer
but I
it
think
that
that's incredible. I think,
absolutely.
Yeah,
I think so too. I mean, I think that people feel you have to be in his mold.
Yeah.
And you have to follow this structure in this way. And it's, no, you really don't. You honestly don't. Society will tell you that.
Yeah.
But you don't. You really don't. It's not, for me, I look at you, Ben, and I have always said this to Tracy. I said, he just seems so damn happy in what he does. And joy to him does not mean, like, your success is not measured by monetary assets or anything. Your joy, as you started with, was, I just want to help people.
Yeah.
And I want to solve problems. And you could see it in your face. You could see it how you present yourself and how you do that. And I think it's amazing, honestly. I think that the fact that you wake up every day and you're like, I'm going to have a good day today, right? And your day could be shitty, right? You have some, spreadsheets or whatever, or something goes down. But you don't allow it to impact the way you are and the way you treat other people and even your customers, right? Customers or staff. I think that's beautiful. Honestly, man.
So I appreciate that, Pat. And I had a really cool example of that probably like 3 or 4 years ago. Cold call came in or through the website, contacted them, and what they needed, our company couldn't provide them. We were like, actually, you need to speak to this company. We literally gave them the contact name of the competitor to go to. And I even emailed them, because when we go to trade shows, we all go out for beers together. And I was like, hey, heads up, they literally need you. And they were like, you're like, we knew about that company, but like, really? You're recommending your... I'm like, yeah. They're like, oh, you're on like, almost like, are you on a kickback? And I'm like, no. Like, it's just the right thing to do. And long story short, that person I spoke to, they did deploy that solution, but they then moved to another company. And because of the way I'd acted so sincerely and given them this impartial advice, they then became a customer of us. And I'm like, well, I didn't do it for that.
Yeah.
I did it because I want you to have the best fit.
What comes around goes around. And I think it's so important to say there's enough work for everybody.
Yeah.
Like, there's so many...
The piece of pie is massive.
It's massive. And people think that if you have competition, then like, oh my God, what am I doing? And they get scared. Like, no, there's enough work for all of us. Like, we don't have to be scared that like, if you have someone that's doing the same thing as you, that you're not going to succeed. No, you're going to do it differently. And you're going to have different types of... I think that's beautiful, the fact that you have that confidence, that strength to say, you know what, I am happy to lift up a competitor, because it does come back around. I'm a little woo-woo, so I think about like, manifesting and all the energy coming around. But when you put that out there, it does come back to you.
It's really simple. Just treat others the way you want to be treated yourself. Yeah. I know it sounds so cliche, but it is really
It actually
simple.
is true. I believe that. It sounds very cliche, and she is very woo-woo, so be careful when she doesn't put stuff at you. And I honestly, Ben, I don't really say this to many people. I've ran a business. I think I told you this. Hundreds of employees, very service oriented. Nobody cares about a janitor. It's what do you call it? It's a very thankless job. And one of the biggest things that I take away from knowing you, and I mean this with all my heart, is you are just a straight up genuine dude.
No, I appreciate that.
Period.
That's cool.
Like, there's this, I think the way you are in business is the way you are. And I know this is the way you are in real life. That's how you see life. That's how you live your life. And I really commend you, man. I think that what you're doing at Avius and what Avius is doing and the future state of where Avius is going I think you guys are bound to success on your leadership. And I know that it takes an army to do this, but I say the same thing about Tracy. I always say is when you finally find someone that you click with, you want to keep that circle, that nucleus, that node together, right? That node was that software part.
Yeah.
Well, it's such a good point, though. Like, how do you, as you're growing, because you are growing, how do you keep that culture that Pat just talked about? How do you?
It is tricky.
Yeah.
And I think the best example of that is just leading from the front with being, as you guys obviously know me, but going back to England, so where the head office is, where the majority of the staff are, I walk in the office and I'll obviously let them know on Slack that I'm turning up. And people don't know me, so sometimes they're like nervous. Sometimes people super dress up because they're like, "Oh, the CEO." It's like, and literally, they'll see me, and I'll be the one taking the trash out, or I'll be the one walking in with a hangover, and going, "Oh my god, I got absolutely trashed last night." And it's just because I'm just human, and of course we've had to be a bit more formalized, and we now have an HR department and things like that, and of course there's legalities you have to step through, but it's just being human and being vulnerable, I guess. You know, you mentioned about it, you know, being honest. You know, no one gets it right all the time, and that's okay.
The vulnerability, we just actually had somebody come on recently, and you were at a VC event where they never speak of vulnerability. They always want things in this like perfect structured box, right, aspect of it. But there is a risk, and you have, I mean, when you started Trax, people made fun of you. When you started this, people, even now people are like, "Oh, no one's going to ever leave feedback." No, dude, you'd be very surprised. People will tell you. If you give someone a platform, they will tell you what their thoughts are, right? What you do with that data, that's up to you, right? That's now business decisions. That's outside of that aspect of it. But this is a question for both of you guys, actually, is how were you able to remove that white noise and the outside voices to stay focused in what you truly believed? And you may not have a full plan, but you believe that you can make a difference and you could improve someone's life or experience.
So jumping straight into that ahead of Tracy, because
No, but you are the guest.
well, I guess But I was also taught that ladies first.
In Bournemouth or in
bit of A, bit of B.
Okay.
It's knowing that you don't always have the right answer, and taking a step back sometimes of like, well, we think we want to go that route, and you look at the company, and we have, you know, I've highlighted on what we've done, but we were a small company where we were trying to scrabble around to make revenue. We were doing websites. We were doing all sorts of random other projects because it was revenue. And it's like, oh, my nightclub needs a nightclub. It's, you know, it needs a website. Well, that's £3,000 worth of revenue. We'll take that.
We'll take it. We'll do it for you.
You know, and the problem we had back in the day is we spread ourselves too thin, and we didn't have focus. So right now with our products, and similar to what you've done with Trax, you've done really beautifully with that you guys are bringing in all these different partners and amalgamating them. But you're also not going out and creating your own people counters.
Correct.
You're not going out creating your own smiley face tablets because you're like, stay in your swim lane. Like, you can do that, I can do that. So that's definitely one of the things that I've looked at.
Yeah, I think when it comes to like all the noise behind, like, you do just have to trust your gut. And when you have this feeling that you know you're onto something, it's a lot easier to tune out everybody else who's telling you that you're not onto it. And I think it's a different type of person, a different type. Like, I don't think everybody is meant for that. Like, I'm not meant to do a lot of other things. But when you can sit down and when people are telling you or distracting you and you're just trying to figure it out, I think when you look at the end result and you know you have a solution, when you've got that like bug in you, it's almost like it takes over your body. Like it's like a parasite. Like it literally is thinking for you of like, people are calling me stupid. I don't care. I know I'm onto something. People are telling me you can't do it. I know I'm onto something. So it just keeps driving you. And I'm sure you've had that same.
I've had that externally and internally within the team when I've said, hey, we need it to do this. And they're like, but that doesn't make sense. And I'm like, but because that's your persona. You're not the bigger, wider client. And equally clients are like, well, no, we've always done it that way. We have to stick with that. And it's like, maybe you don't ask a 20-question survey. Let's ask a 5-question survey. And they're like, but it's like, no, just like
we run into that with like workflows, right? Because we're very service oriented. So like if our system is like too complex for a workflow, then our workflow may not align with what they do, right? And so we have to either redevelop or reconfigure or find different ways of meeting that. But I want to go back to the question again one more time. Just when you look at the success you've had, right, and the people you've obviously surrounded yourself with very smart people who've helped you get to this point. At what point did you were able to just say, I'm blocking out white noise? Now, I don't mean customer requests and all these things. When I mean white noise, I mean like gibberish that will come to you and say, Ben, this isn't going to work.
You don't
Ben,
have
this
enough
is going to
money.
fail.
You're not
You don't
smart
have enough
enough.
money.
You're not...
You can't scale X, Y, and Z. Like, at what point in this journey where you're like, I cannot listen to people, I need to listen to myself?
So, I don't...
Other than 12, when you are hustling your friends.
Especially if we're talking Avius focus, I don't know if there's ever been a real time like that.
Okay.
I've always been very open
That's
to...
fair.
And even now,
That's fair.
we've just launched a new product, which is a system that I never thought we would do. But the other team were like, well, the competitors are doing it. So there's obviously an appetite for it.
Yeah.
Let's do it. And I wasn't against it, but I was like, I didn't think that'd be on a horizon. I actually didn't think we had the skill set to do it.
Okay.
But we've evolved it up, and I say we can tell the listeners now by the timing of this that it's the push buttons like you see in airports and theme parks, where it's just literally 3 quote unquote dumb buttons on the wall that are happy face, sad face, middle face. And for me, I've never appreciated the value of that because it doesn't tell you anything. It tells you a number,
Right.
but it doesn't tell you why there's a line at TSA.
Right.
It doesn't tell you why.
Same mindset where when I first met you, I was talking to Tracy. I was like, this guy has the most genius product because he homes in onto the actual problem of the why. Thank you for saying for the why aspect of it. But
Whereas we're talking to, with this product already, we're talking to a client that's got many thousands of locations, and putting our tablet-based solution wouldn't be feasible for them.
Right.
But whereas they can put our buttons everywhere, and then their bottom 5%, 10% of locations, they can then upgrade them to tablets and roam them around the country and find out why they're
pretty genius.
So we'll see what happens.
So I have to say, because I've gone through my own journey, you started young too. And so when you were like early,
young. He fucking started when he was 12.
Okay, let's take out the 12. But we both started young, right? Yeah. And I feel like who you are in your early 20s is very different than who you are in your late 30s, early 40s, going on. So can you talk about your journey as figuring out you as a leader? Because when you're in front of people, like everyone's looking at you, and you're also maturing and evolving in front of people. So I mean, maybe it's different for a dude. I don't know. But how is that experience for you finding yourself as a CEO, as a leader, 20 to 41?
Yeah, I think that's really interesting. And even going back to my schooling days, when I was at school, once a term, you would have to stand up in front of the whole assembly and read out a prayer or a reading or whatever.
Right.
And I was petrified. Like, it would make me nervous for weeks. The first time I was a best man, I was nervous of doing it. I enjoy speaking to people. Whereas now, from the public speaking side of things, I love it. I relish it. If I get the opportunity, I was a moderator.
I
and
hate
a speaker.
virtual. I like in-person meetings.
Yeah, but I love presenting to a room of 400 or 500 people now. I thrive on that. I love that because I can share, and I don't do it scripted. One of my taglines when I do a presentation is, hey, everyone in the room, we're not going to be death by PowerPoint.
Yeah.
This is going to be real. It's going to be live.
Absolutely.
It's going to be
I
interactive.
will email you the PowerPoint after the meeting.
Which I love. Exactly. You can follow up with that. But
Yeah.
in terms of the staff, it's learning.
Yeah.
Those first times we had a few employees, we were going out for beers, and I didn't realise that I was quite cuss in my language and how I treat things, and calling people at 8 o'clock at night, oh, can you get this done because it was the most important thing right now. You learn to evolve to, well, actually, some things aren't that important and it can wait to the next day. I'm like Tracy, that if she gets an email and I can fix it, I will wake up and I will fix it because it's what I would want the other way around, and
absolutely.
it impresses.
Yeah.
So it's learning. Ultimately, it's my own SLA, I guess.
Yeah.
In terms of what's an urgent, quick, there's a fire, put it out. But it's just, it says, going back, COVID was a great example.
Yeah.
With our team, there was a great furlough scheme in England, so everyone's still got 70% of their income. We then, as directors, decided we're going to top that up because everyone in our team's used to having this income. They've got families, they've got everything else. This is a time of distress. We don't know how long it's going to go on for. We can afford to do it, so let's do it because it's the right thing to do. But more importantly to our staff, we were open and honest. So we still met with them once every couple of weeks, and we didn't quite show them the bank balance, but we were saying, look, we can run for this many months without any income, and we're going to be okay. So it gave them the assurance of these guys care about us.
Yeah.
So when it came out of COVID, and especially you've seen over in the States and same in Europe, people are now job hopping all the time because they can get a better step up. Whereas our team, they came out of this, and a few of them obviously got approached for jobs, and they've been honest with us and said, hey, I've been headhunted for 20% more, but I enjoy the culture and what you guys have got here. But harnessing and keeping hold of that, we didn't do the COVID top up as a power play of this. We couldn't see the future, but it was just the right thing to do. And we've had employees that do leave us because they're moving on their career, and we love that because it's it's the next level.
Absolutely.
Right,
It's their
absolutely.
journey. Yeah.
It's like that guy, Mini Ben, that I mentioned. He was our first intern student. He worked for us. It was great. But he's now gone on to do great things. He's now a cyber hacker and all sorts. It's like, that's cool. Like,
That is really cool. That is cool. It is beautiful. You have to be able to, I don't know yourself enough to not let all of that, people leaving, you can't let that personally affect you, or people changing or what they say. Like, you just have to be steady in
Yeah.
who you are. And I think as you started in your early 20s and then to where you are in, 40s, you definitely are more confident. Like, you go through that
Yeah.
phase where you're kind of figuring it out, and you're gonna fuck up, right?
and yeah, absolutely. And you're a bit more long in the tooth of
Yeah.
experience of what happens.
Yeah.
We've had staff that obviously get pregnant. And
Yeah,
and
totally.
like the first time that happened, it was like, oh, we've got to pay for that. And it's like, it's such a naive thing to think.
Right.
But
Yeah.
you don't realize, and
Yeah.
it's like, well, actually, that's okay.
Yeah.
And like, you can
You're
deal
gonna
with
be
that.
okay.
Exactly. And other people have stuff going on that
Yeah.
can be sometimes really harrowing, and they don't realize. And
Yeah.
my team, I think, without exception, they all feel confident enough that we've got. And I was telling Pat this earlier. We've got a pretty flat hierarchy.
Mm-hmm.
We're relatively small. We've got under 20 employees, but my phone is always available to
Yeah,
any of my
absolutely.
team. So if they've got a problem with the UK team, they can call me.
Yep.
If I've got a problem with anything, it's very
Yeah.
sharey.
Right.
And that's a culture that you can't teach that. It
You
just
can't
evolves.
teach that because they don't teach that, right? Like, you're not supposed to be able to have a direct line to a CEO is what we're taught, right? And realistically, you make yourself available
Yeah.
for everyone because everyone is working on the same cause, same vision
Yeah.
that you have. So I'm going to do a time check because Tracy yells at me all the time.
We're good. We got about 10 minutes. So
All
I
right.
want to pick his brain on, we got to do some
All right,
little hot seat
I
questions.
need 5 minutes for my rapid fire, which is unscripted. And he's only going to have 5 seconds to answer my question.
Okay.
And I have 10. So you can go and ask whatever
Okay,
you want.
mine are more serious and in
Mine
depth.
are not serious, then.
So, okay. So we'll do the serious stuff and then we'll end on the lighthearted
All right.
bullshit. No, I'm just teasing.
Classic Pat.
It is BS. It's Pat. So, like, completely go. You go first, and then I'll go
Okay,
last.
so the point of all of us, coming together, and the point of the layover is to inspire other entrepreneurs. We get a lot of people who are either early on their journey or they're in the middle of it, trying to figure it out, and then some people who are just hit that success point, their definition of success. So my first question to you is, piece of advice, someone who wants to start a business and they're nervous about taking that step, what would it be?
Don't be afraid to do it. As I referenced earlier, Richard Branson, screw it, let's do it.
Yeah, screw it, let's do it. I like that. That should be the title of this
fucking
podcast.
t-shirt.
Yeah, screw it, let's do it. Number 2, what is your definition of success?
Being in a job that I'm happy, I think. Like, that's so cool for me that, I'm getting challenged, but I'm around good people and I enjoy it.
I love it. I love it. And then lastly, when you are faced with a challenge, what is your go-to on how do you process? How do you find that solution?
So number 1, you freak out.
Call the therapist. Number 2.
She's normally 3. Number 2, I dump on my company Slack channel,
Yeah.
depending on who it needs to
Yeah.
go to. But no, just don't be afraid. Just like, nothing's impossible.
Yeah.
And at the end of the day, it's okay to say no to people.
Yeah.
That's another thing. Back in the day, that expansion we had of we've got to deploy to these sites. If I was to do that now, it would be we can. It's going
Yeah.
to take 6 months. Whereas back then, it was
Just do it.
we'll get it done.
Yeah, just do it.
Yeah, no problem, man. Don't worry about it.
I
We'll
love
figure it out. We're a little bit delayed on the release, but we'll get it out. But I always joke with that because that's a funny answer. Because mine was always star 1 is Tracy,
Yeah.
star 2 is my therapist, star 3 is my mom, who knows my therapist. So that's a common thing. So you only had 3.
I only had 3. I wanted
Oh
some deep
man, mine's
questions. All right,
rapid
go.
fire.
Go
Mine's
rapid
good.
fire.
All right, ready?
That was fairly rapid, but okay.
Yeah, mine's gonna be rapid. So, favorite football club?
Newcastle
Premier League.
United. Newcastle United.
Newcastle United. What do you think of the prison outfits they wear?
I think they're fantastic and unique. They have the best fans in the world.
All right, so minor soccer, which is the EPL.
Don't really have one,
Okay.
unfortunately. Like I've got a friend of mine that jokes with me that I've affiliated myself to teams wherever I've lived.
Okay. Favorite MLS team if you even look at the MLS?
It's unfortunately not
Horrible.
for me.
Thank you. Next question. So, next question is favorite city in the United States.
Ooh, that's a great question. Can that evolve? I know it's a quick fire.
Hey, sure.
It used to be, because it was iconic and always wanted to go, it used to be absolutely Vegas.
Okay.
Haven't fallen out of love with Vegas, but Vegas has evolved and changed.
Yeah.
Okay.
Love Chicago. Chicago's great.
Yeah, absolutely. Chicago's food scene is amazing.
So I
People-
think Chicago.
very underestimated Chicago, but
But
the
I think
inner city's good.
I think number 1 for me right now is probably San Diego.
Okay,
Love San Diego.
I was just there. I was just in San Diego. I was up in Carlsbad. Shout out to Chris in Carlsbad. Least favorite city in the U.S.
Ooh, least favorite. I can't say that. I'm going through a visa application.
Yeah, no,
I love every city here.
No, only, and I'm only generalizing it. But when I had that 6 months placement in London,
Yep.
I didn't like working in London. I knew I didn't want to be in the
Yeah.
big city. So for me, New York, I love to visit, but would never want to work
Yeah,
there.
okay, that's fair. Let's see. Best theme park.
Six Flags Magic Mountain in California,
Where's that located, actually?
Valencia, so northeast of LA.
Okay. Favorite pastime thing to do.
Ooh, I'm really, and I should give this up, but I'm still absolutely loving playing rugby.
Ooh.
So I play for
okay.
the Orlando, or the Claymores.
Okay. So a lot of individuals don't know, but you love cruises.
I do enjoy
Okay.
cruises.
What's the most amount of cruises you've ever gone in a 12-month span?
I can't answer because my directors are listening. No, I'm rather fortunate that I've cruised on average about once a month from time to time because
right.
it's fun.
Shit.
Okay. Favorite Disney park.
Hollywood Studios, probably, in Orlando.
Lordy, have mercy.
I mean, he came hard on
He did
that.
come.
Yeah. I have to ask this last one. Do you follow any like NFL, NBA?
I do.
Okay.
I,
So,
I prefer football to soccer.
okay.
Oh, no shit.
Yeah, so I'm a Dolphins fan
Okay.
purely because the first ever game I saw was the international series where they played the Giants at Wembley.
Yes.
And that was, I don't know which year it was.
And nobody
but
likes
it was-
the Giants
Well, it was
anyways.
when the Giants went on to win the Super Bowl.
Yes,
Yeah.
against the Patriots.
We can date that for whatever years.
Yeah.
And being British, we all went to the game and it was the fun fair and what's this tailgate thing all about.
Yeah.
And being British, you always support the underdog.
Yeah.
So we did support the underdog. It was an awful game. The Dolphins got smashed.
Yeah.
So I've been loosely affiliated to that. I think tactically, because I now understand the game, and I learnt that through a friend of mine, and he sat down on a college Saturday and he's like, right, you're going to learn how this game works. And now I get it. A, I wish I could have played it. B, it's one of the best games in the world tactically.
Yeah.
And this is massively controversial and people normally walk away from me. It would be the best sport in the world if they got rid of pads and helmets.
Oof.
Because coming from a rugby
Fair.
background,
Yeah, you're rugby.
if you tackle properly, it doesn't hurt.
Fair.
And we've brought a lot of American footballers into our rugby team,
Correct.
and they get carded straight away because they tackle really badly.
Yeah.
Correct. And the NFL has brought a lot of rugby players to be the punters, field goal kickers,
Yeah.
and kickoffs, including the University of Miami, who was the first one to do it. And Ozzy came over and he was punting balls 70 yards.
Yeah.
And they're like, who is this guy? And he was like, well, his ball's 3 times smaller.
But
than
it's
what we
a
normally
great game, but you watch it and they're awful at tackling, and you get all these head injuries because they're like caveman
Yeah.
smashing.
Yeah,
It's
it's
like,
caveman. Yeah.
Well,
What are you
I mean,
doing?
Caveman is the right thing. So let me ask you a question, because when you saw me take out the University of Miami out of
Yeah.
that thing, so what was your thing with the University of Miami?
if I was to have a college team that I had an affinity to, it'd be through UM, just through previous friendships that I've had.
So you would follow UM?
I would be aware. I wouldn't know who they're playing. I wouldn't know how their season's going.
Well, don't hang out with Tracy. She's a bulldog that's like this big.
Is that Georgia?
It's Georgia. It's Georgia. We'll have to take him to a game. We'll have to take
We
him to
will.
a game.
All right.
But honestly, man, I cannot thank you enough.
Yes.
We've been talking about this
We are long overdue.
almost a
August.
year and a
Yeah.
half since when we started the concept of the podcast.
You were like number one on
You
the
were
list.
like number one, and we couldn't
Well, I
get
made
you
number
on.
one of season 2.
There you
I'm
go,
happy with
number
that.
one
So
season
you
two.
are number one of season 2, and we are beyond grateful that you took the time and to come up and chat
Yeah,
with us.
it's easy. I think, and also on behalf of the listeners, thank you guys because it's a lot of effort.
Yeah.
The listeners here, the behind the scenes, the setup, the prep. It's a lot of work, and it's usually a thankless task. You guys aren't making revenue from this. You're doing it kind of for the passion and the
Right.
sharing and the giving back. So thank you both as well.
Thank you. I
Absolutely.
appreciate
it's a
it.
two-way
So where
thing.
can people find you? Go
I
and
hide,
plug
I hide.
yourself.
No.
All right. Well, then how about your company?
on a cruise ship.
He's like my OnlyFans is. I'm kidding. No.
Wow, we got to that.
Yeah.
Okay, who had 740? No,
And next podcast.
no, I'm totally available. You can literally email me directly. It's real simple. ben@avius.com, which is avius.com. Literally email me. I will get back to you. You'll find me obviously through the webpage. But yeah, contact me if you need any help. And it doesn't have to be business related. It can be a visa challenge. It could be expanding a company into another country. That was a big learning curve for us, and I'm still learning it now. Hence my comment about a visa application.
Right.
I'm genuinely doing that right now.
That's tough.
So if it's not always profit and loss. It can be outside of things as well.
We're joking about like price sensitivity and like adjustments to other countries. Where it's like, wait, I can only charge $1. Yeah, that's all you can charge here. Aspect of it.
All right. Well, thank you so much,
A
Ben. We
pleasure.
love you. We love you. Thank you for spending this evening with us.
Good fun. Thank you very much, guys.
Appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you for tuning in to this episode of the Layover podcast. If you feel so called to, we would love it if you would rate and review, and make sure you're subscribed on Apple and Spotify so you don't miss our weekly drops. Head over to mindandsocial.com/subscribe to join our newsletter for more behind the scenes content. We love you guys. Thank you for tuning in weekly, and we will see you next week.
Can't accept the loss, I'm hard-headed. There's a little bit